Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second session of Research and Publication Ethics. In last session, we talked about syllabus and we talked about introduction of research ethics. And today, we're gonna start with our second session, second lecture, and Unit 1, Lecture 2, and the title of the unit is Philosophy and Ethics. And in last session, I hope you remember, we talked about philosophy. Why philosophy? Because when when you receive a degree, whether it's an MPhil degree or PhD degree, you might have noticed a very important thing that they give you a degree of doctorate of philosophy and a master of philosophy. And why they give this degree to you? We'll discuss that, and we'll discuss the philosophy also, and beside that we'll talk about the ethics. So what we're going to cover today, let me put some light on that. So very important thing, what are the different areas which actually represent some dimension, one dimension, not other dimension. I'm not talking about other dimension, but one very important dimension called ethics. Is it a way of our life? Is it a kind of guidelines which give us some kind of instructions that we need to live like this, right? Or what is ethics? And is it applicable on in our life? Or is it applicable in research? Is it applicable in publication? Or what are the different areas where ethics are applicable? So first, very important thing we're gonna cover, it's called area of ethics. Second thing, now when we talk about our culture, when we talk about ethics, definitely we need to go back and search for our history, from where this ethics arised, from where this ethics occurred, and especially in research, how did this ethics enter into a research? Or when you think of a research, you think of ethics also. So both are, two sides of a coin. So we will talk about history. There are very famous case, very famous case. We'll talk about that. Now we'll talk about a case study also. So that's why I told you that today it's gonna be a kind of discussion. So will give you some example, and I will request you to reflect, or you reflect on these different issue we're gonna talk today. So the example would be Lifeboat case. Is murder allowed by necessity? So there was a very famous case in the history of law, and when you join LLB or you go to any law school, they teach you this famous case. So we'll discuss this, and this actually reflect on ethics. It reflect on moral values, and then very famous code of conduct by Nuremberg Code, which we call it Nuremberg Code. What is this? We will discuss about that also, and then finally we will discuss the Tuskegee civil study. Right. So these three area we're gonna cover today. So let us go ahead. So we start with different four areas where actually ethics are applicable. Undoubtedly, you talk about any area, you will see there must be a code of conduct, undoubtedly. But as far as research is concerned, what are the different perspective, what are the different dimension in research which actually required ethics, moral values? So we start with a discussion. Before I proceed further, just give me one. So when we think of ethics, yes, it is something we expect from the society. So when we expect something from society, we also need to perform in the similar way. If we perform in the similar way, then we can expect same thing from the society also. And I hope you remember in the last lecture, we discussed that whatever we do, whatever human tendency we have, whatever behavior we show, each and every act, each and every possible reaction will have some logic. You remember yesterday we talked about, you remember last session we discussed, and we have given one example of children playing cricket on a street, right? And we discussed that this is the children behavior, that when they play a cricket, they play cricket, not only they play cricket, they fight also with each other, right? So this is a dynamic of a culture, this is a dynamic of a society. So you think of any behavior, let me give one example. So in research, not only this ethics, let me give you one example. See, those who drive four-wheeler, among all of you, what is the first thing you do when you enter into a four-wheeler? So first thing you do, what you do when you enter into your four-wheeler, first thing that you need to fasten your seat belt. Who told you to fasten your seat belt?
Sir, there are
So when you drive
Yes,
a car,
yes.
code of conducts are there. You need to follow these code of conduct. Not only you yourself, you expect from others also that they will follow the code of conduct. So now see what I'm going to do with this example. I'm clubbing together ethics and our rational behavior. Ethics on the one side, rational behavior of ours, and third, the code of conduct, right? And plus the logic. Because all these things, if you are able to understand, 90% of my work would be done. So listen carefully. So when you enter into your four-wheeler, first thing you need to fasten your seat belt. Second, do you know who invented this seat belt and why they invented this seat belt? I tell you the story. In USA in 1970, a lot of people were dying on the road accidents. A lot of people were dying on the road accident. There was a huge casualty. So one company called Volvo, they invented a seat belt, and they thought that if people start using seat belt, the casualty rate would be low, death rate would be low. So my question was to all of you, that when Volvo invented a seat belt, what is your opinion? What is your perception? Do you believe that death rate has come down? So all of you have mentioned yes, because people now using seat belt, the death rate has come down and the casualty has come down. Now let me ask, what is the logic behind this? Why do you feel so that casualty and death rate has come down? So you people feel that when we use seat belt, I mean when seat belt is there, people use seat belt, and now they all will feel that yes, now they are safe, and it would be used as a safety measure, and because of that the casualty and death rate will come down. So as per the USA record, what had happened there, instead of decreasing death rate or casualty because of seat belt, the death rate and casualty has gone up. So as a researcher, what we need to do, whatever we perceive, it may or may not be a truth, but as a researcher, what we should do, we try to dig more, and we need to try to find out what is the basic reason behind this. And let me tell you what is the logic behind this. Logic says it's a human tendency. Whenever you feel safe, what you do? You take more risk. So it happened with this example. Now people were safe. They felt now because of seat belt nothing will happen to me. So what they did? They start taking more risk and they drive more fast. And because of that, even after invention or innovation of a seat belt, what happened? The death rate has gone up. So here you see, as a researcher, what we need to do, we need to see that what is the reality and why this is so. So we need to understand human tendency, human behavior, human psychology, and for that we need to study philosophy. And what is ethics into this? Ethics say that here ethics would be that you would be expecting each and everyone, that everybody would be, before they drive their car, they're supposed to use their seat belt. Right? This is code of conduct. This kind of ethical values we all agree. But you don't understand human tendency. Human tendency is something else. Human tendency say that whenever you are safe, what you do? Whenever we give you safety measure, you take more and more and more risk. And that's why in this example, whatever perception we had that death rate would have come down, but actually death rate has gone up, because now people felt they are more safe because of seat belt. So now you understand that when we think of human behavior, we need to study human behavior, human psychology, and whatever perception we have, I may or may not be sure about it until or unless we collect data, we analyze information, but all these things should be under the ethical code of conduct. It all must be under the ethical code of conduct. I have many examples I can give you here, but let me put some light on what are the different ethical code of conduct, or what are the different areas, especially in research. So first is human and animals. You might have seen, especially in science, we conduct lot of research on animals, and sometimes we conduct research on human body also, right? Especially in science, when actually you do your MBBS or MD, right? When you go for surgery, or in before you go for making a drug, what you do, you taste that drug. Testing is going on not only on human beings but on animals. So there may be an issue of cruelty, but in social science, I believe we are not linked with that kind of cruelty. We are not linked with that ethical concern in human and animal, where we actually, our unit or our object is animal or human, right? Second area is somewhere linked with us, somewhere related with all of us, because we are talking about human being, we are talking about society, we are talking about people, we are talking about individual, and these individual, these human beings, they become our subject of our research, right? So what we do, when you take information from individual, they all become your respondent. Maybe you take data from those who have bank account, so you come to these people and request them, sir, you have bank account in this bank, we want to know your satisfaction level. Or you want to study the consumer behavior towards a particular product, or there may be any example. For example, we want to understand the satisfaction level of a student towards this particular class. Pushpinder sir is teaching this class, so you want to understand the satisfaction level. Are you happy or not? Right? So this is what I may have some kind of undue influence on you, because the teacher and student may have a relationship, and the supervisor and PhD scholars, they have some kind of relationship, and the supervisor will have some kind of undue influence. So are we misusing the people? Are we misusing the human being? Are we misusing the subject? And subject would be a human being. So in this second, human ethics, a human being becomes our unit, and we collect data from them. And generally these relationship violated when we talk about social work. Individuals, researchers, they come to village, they enter into a tribal area, they enter into a rural area, and they disclose information which they should not. they talk about the particular tribe, particular culture, and this culture and tribes, maybe some people they can misuse that information, and you have some benefit, you got some advantages, and you conduct a research. What you need to do, you need to give them respect, you need to treat them as a human being. They may be poor people, they may be villager, they may be from rural area, but you need to treat them as a human being. Now third area, here you can see sometime beside taking a human being, we takes, our unit, our subject, the different variables of the environment, right? So maybe this is basically for, especially for those who are working on an animal, those who are working on plants, those who are working on biology. So different species are there, so if they, you put them in a danger, right? So that would be somewhere horrible, because you are taking away very important animal, important part of our system. So you need to take care of that. And finally, very important, we all are in scientific community, and this course is because of this fourth, you can see scientific community. And in this we talk about that, are we talking about research where we have given a false information, we have used wrong tools and techniques, we have used publication for, or we have used our particular journal, we have paid for that, and we get paper published in that journal. And all this we do for what? We do because when you do your PhD, it's a mandatory for research scholar, PhD scholar, that they should have at least 2 publications. Similarly, for promotion as a professor, you would be needed 10 publication according to UGC norms. So you are in hurry and you copy and paste some material and send it for a publication, and you pay to journal for what? For increasing your API, or for your promotion, or to get a good job. So these are 4 basic areas, especially in research and a publication. So we are not into human and animal cruelty, but we are linked with human ethics. This is our cup of tea. We are not much in environment ethics, but we are into scientific community ethics. So these are 4 areas. They are somewhere connected with research and publication. Now let us move and discuss a very important example, and which reflect, this example actually reflect on history of our ethics. So just think of it's a very famous example. When you go for your law degree, each and every university, each and every institution, they take this case and discuss with the students. So here we're gonna discuss it. I request you all, please listen carefully and give your reflection. So let me tell you what we are talking about. This is a very famous case. We'll talk about that. So after this case, we'll talk about Nuremberg Code and then Tuskegee study. But here you can see a lifeboat case example. This is a real story. Believe me, this is a real story. And this was the case between the Queen versus Dudley and Stephen. It's a 19th century British law case. And the title is Sadder Story at the Sea. What happened? The ship, founded in the South Atlantic, 1300 miles from the Cape Town, and there were 4 in the crew. So there were 4 crew members in the ship. Captain was Dudley, and first mate was Stephen, and sailor was Brooke, and cabin boy was Richard Parker. And among these all 4, Dudley, Stephens, Brooks, Richard Parker, Richard Parker was the youngest person. He was just a 17-year-old, and unfortunately, he was an orphan and had no family. And what happened when they were, sailing and they were going by ship? The wave hit the ship, and they went on lifeboat. And when you are on a lifeboat, what happened? You can see here the picture here also. There are 4 people, and you can see 3 are sitting, and one Richard Parker is there, who is lying there. So first 3 days they ate nothing. So you see this situation. I mean, this is a very horrible situation, kind of situation where you stuck in a lifeboat and in a boat, and you have nothing to eat. Fourth day they have one can of some bottle or something, so some cold drink. So they use that all 4. Next day they caught a turtle and ate a turtle, and after that they had no water, no food for next 8 days. Right? If this happens with us, I don't know what we will be doing. Unfortunately, Richard Parker, he drank seawater and he had become ill, and he appeared to be dying. And what happened? As I told you, Parker drank seawater and he had become ill, and he appeared to be dying. On the 19th day, Dudley, the Stephen, and Stephen suggested that they should have a lottery. Lottery for what? So they draw a lot who would die to save the rest. Can you think like this, that out of 4 people they're gonna have a draw, and they will select one chit, and whosoever will come in that chit, he is supposed to die for the rest of 3 people. But unfortunately, what happened? One person, Mr. Brooke, he said, no, this is not a good way, right? This is not a right way. I can be one who got selected, then I would be in problem. You will kill me and will, take away all my blood, will drink my blood and eat my flesh. So Dudley decided that boy Parker had better be killed. And what happened? He was already, had taken a lot of seawater, and he was about to die. And so all these 3, you can see this pic also on your, screen, and all killed him with pen knife, stabbing him in a jugular vein. And next 4 days, the 3 fed on the body and blood of the cabin boy. Right? Now this is a very, very famous case, but what happened? Finally they were rescued, and when they came here in England, they felt that we all are, we have done a good job, right? We were there and we were able to save our life, we are heroes. But this was not okay. When this case came in a court had taken a different decision. Now tell me, was it a good decision to save life of 3 people, killing one? Undoubtedly he was the young person, undoubtedly he was an orphan, undoubtedly he was about to die. But do you think this was a right act? Ethically this was right? So in this example, is murder allowed by necessity? So I hope you all agree that no, it's not a right, it's unethical. To save more people, you cannot kill one. It's not right, it's unethical, right? But here logic says, and here you can see a logic. What is the logic to kill someone to save more people? Is it logical? No, it's not a logical thing, right? So what philosophy says? So different philosophers, they had given their justification, and that justification came from their experience, and they have given some logic, and they justify with their logic that they feel that this was a right act, ethically this was right, because here the Richard Parker, listen carefully, Richard Parker was orphan, and actually he was about to die because he already have drunk, already have taken sea water. So what is wrong in it? He was about to die, and because of his blood, because his body, we saved 3 people, and these 3 people had family, right? So this is a right act. This is good. Ethically, this is okay. So we have 2 different philosophers. One philosophy say this was a good act. The other philosophy say no, this was not a good act. Now listen carefully, everybody. What is our role as a researcher? Our role is to understand this kind of phenomena. Whenever this kind of situation occurred, we need to approve and disapprove a particular logic, and that logic would be that it's okay to kill someone to save more people, or logic would be no, ethically it's not good, you cannot kill anyone just to save more people. And then you will defend your act, you will defend whatever you are saying, and when you defend, what happens, actually you actually defend a particular philosophy. So one group says it was right act, other philosophers say this was a wrong act, and when you do this kind of research, what happens, you get knowledge, and knowledge become a philosophy, and philosophy give you a wisdom, and this is ultimate goal of our life. Where we want to reach? We want to reach at a situation, at a position that we will have wisdom. So we have got very few people in India, those have reached up to such extent that they move away, not only they have had lot of knowledge, that knowledge help them to make them philosopher, and from philosophy they become a person who had a wisdom. So let me name few people. I hope you know the philosopher in India, Indian philosopher Chanakya, and then Swami Vivekananda, who had given his wisdom. And that wisdom comes from where? Wisdom comes from justification of a logic with some ethics. So you may be on the one side where everything ethically, logically, everything is okay. Now it gave you some kind of philosophy, and finally it gave you wisdom. Then there are other people, those who may not agree with whatever we are talking, but they may have their philosophy, and they will have their wisdom. So here you see, in 1947, we have Nuremberg Code. Nuremberg Code is the most important document in the history of ethics of medical research, right? So the code was formulated in August 1947 in Nuremberg, Germany, by American judges sitting in judgment of Nazi doctors accused of conducting murderous and torturous human experiment in the concentration camp, the so-called doctor trial. So at that time we have a concentration camps, and these people were living very miserable life, and these were very poor people. So doctor, what they did, they didn't tell them that they are making some kind of experiment on human being, right? So later on it was found that they were treated as a unit to make an experiment. And finally, because here doctor has got some power, and doctor may not or may tell the patient that we are trying to test this particular drugs on you. If you disclose, it's fine. If you are not disclosing, that would be an inhuman activity. So because doctor has got undue influence on the patient, so because of this act, because of this, the Nuremberg Code came out in 1947. But before that, let me show you this video.
The focus in the United States on research ethics began with the news of the research done by Nazi physicians on concentration camp prisoners during World War II.
These are the
There was
concentration
a
camp
war
people.
crimes trial held in the city of Nuremberg, which produced the Nuremberg Code, the first international code of ethics for research on human subjects. In the United States, interest
the video
in
is
the
not at
topic
all
was
audible.
reawakened in
Okay.
the mid to late 1960s when we got reports of
So what I will do, I will share with you the link of this, okay, and then you can watch it. They will give you some kind of basic understanding what was all about. What was this case all about, okay, everybody. So let us move further. Okay. So here on December 9, 1947, an American military tribunal opened criminal proceedings against 23 leading German physicians and administrators for their willing participation in war crimes and crimes against humanity. So we should call it war. It's a kind of war crimes. It's a kind of crimes against humanity. And this is known as the doctor's trial, and the medical case, the trial was officially designated United States of America versus Carl. The Nuremberg Trial Code, amongst the other requirements, this document set for the requirement of voluntary informed consent of the human subject. So listen carefully. Whenever you conduct any research, and in that you need to take information from others. For example, doctor do some kind of treatment. So what they do, they take your permission. You remember, whenever you go to hospital or you go to any doctor or a dentist, if you go, if they make any treatment, if they go for any treatment, they ask you to sign, and that signature is actually your consent to them that yes, now you can do this kind of surgery or this kind of work. So here these doctors, they have not taken any consent from these prisoners. So we call it voluntary informed consent of human subject. So remember, when you take information from others, from respondent in your research, maybe consumers, maybe anyone, please tell them that now please give us your consent that I am taking your interview. Please give your consent that you are giving me this information, or I am giving you a questionnaire, and in starting please tell them that please give us your consent. What would be a right time to meet you? What would be the right time to call you? What would be the right time to collect data from you? So in writing, please take that consent and tell them that whatever data we are collecting from you, it would not be used for any commercial purpose, but it would be used for academic purpose, right everybody? And here you can see Nuremberg Code. I'm not going to discuss it. Here you can see required is the voluntary, well-informed, understanding consent. Human subject is a full legal capacity. The experiment should aim. So this is basically linked with those who conduct some scientific work, especially our doctors or those who are in science. They have this kind of. But in R also, suppose you enter into a research where you are dealing with the unit, and the unit is human body, right? So that would be, so you can read it, so I'm not going to discuss it much. And here what was the fine after this Nuremberg Code, we have another example, the last example. It's called Tuskegee study. It was an excellent example of violation of research ethics. because we are talking about research ethics. History of violation of research ethics date back to 1930s. 1932, Tuskegee-Syphilis study conducted by the US Public Health Service, in which patients were not told they had syphilis. Treatment for syphilis was available. See here, the treatment was available, but they didn't use that drugs and they didn't give that kind of treatment. The purpose of the study was to observe the neutral progress of the disease. So they wanted to see that if we don't give drugs, if we don't give them tablet or medicine, how they will die. So can you do like this? Can you see people dying and you have a solution, you have medicine, but you are not giving because you want to know how people will die because of that disease. So patients were deceived, coerced and treated unjustly. This was another example in the history. So here you can see more detail about this Tuskegee study, untreated syphilis in Negro male. So I'm not going to discuss it much because we are not into this kind of scientific or this kind of research, but this gives us some kind of understanding that you cannot play with the human life. You can't do like this, right? You can't play with the man, we cannot play with human body. So you need to take care, you need to treat them with some dignity, right? Here is a more detail about this case study. I'm not going to discuss it here. You can see the men were initially told that the study was only going to last 6 months, but it was extended to 40 years. Can you see? Can you believe it? After funding for treatment was lost, the study was continued without informing the men that they would never be treated. None of the infected men were treated with penicillins, despite the fact that by 1947, the antibiotic was widely available and had become the standard treatment for syphilis. The study continued under numerous public health service supervisors until 1972, when a leak to the press resulted in its termination on November 16 of that year. By then, 28 patients had died directly from syphilis. 100 died from complications related of syphilis, and 40 of the patient wives were infected with syphilis, and 19 children were born with congenital syphilis. You can see this kind of outcome, right? So today we discuss Tuskegee study, we discuss Nuremberg Code, and very important thing we discuss live board case, is murder allowed by necessity. So these are 3 examples which actually give us some kind of understanding that what is right, what is wrong, what is ethics. What is ethics? Can we play with anyone? Can we play with human being life? Can we play with human body? No, we can't. We need to give them some respect. Whosoever is your unit or whosoever is your respondent, whosoever is giving you information, give them some respect, right? Let me see where we are. So I stop it here today.